Welcome to the Microsoft Tips Showcase, where we provide quick, single-topic videos on how to do something within a Microsoft-related tool, such as SharePoint, Dynamics, Office, etc. These tips are brought to you by SV MacPack, a certified veteran-owned and HubZone consulting firm supporting primarily the U.S. federal government. In support of our customers' need to maximize the value of tools they currently invest in, we started creating related videos. We hope these videos help you as well. In this video, you'll learn how to modify a library's version settings. We'll move quickly to keep the video short, but don't worry if you don't get it the first time. You can watch the video again to really understand this lesson. Let's get started by opening a document library, and I have one here called Project Files. We'll click on the Library tab, which opens the Library ribbon, and we can come over to the Settings command group and click on the Library Settings. In the General Settings column, you'll see Version Settings, and that's what we'll click to be able to get to the settings we want to change. Versioning, very briefly, allows you to be able to track changes as you're working on a document, let's say. So anytime you work on a document and you hit Save, SharePoint creates a new version for you, so you can always revert back to a previous version. You can have hundreds and hundreds of versions. This is extremely helpful when you're working with colleagues on collaborative efforts within a document. So let's go ahead and look at some of the settings that you can do within version settings. You have content approval, document version history, draft item security, and required checkout. So just starting at the top, content approval, you can change this to say yes or no on whether it requires an approver to approve a document before it is made public to the people within your organization. And what that means is if it requires approval, but you don't have approval yet, that document will sit kind of in an unpublished or draft mode. Not the legitimate draft that we'll be talking about in a second, but in a mode that most people can't see and only the author and the approvers can see. So you can make that change right here, and definitely click on this link when you're in your own document to learn more, document library to learn more about it. So document version history, this is the part that I think is favored. I'm a big fan of turning on versioning. Anybody in IT who's worried about storage, they can just manage the versions of going in and scrubbing versions that are older than 30 days, let's say. But I'm a big fan of not putting a limit on the number of versions because if you do a lot of changes in a particular day, or if you have 10 people editing a document, you could hit that limit pretty fast and lose versions from a few days ago. It's better, I believe, to sit there and limit the versions for a certain amount of time, and IT support people can take care of that. Anyways, there's three options you can choose, as you can see here. No versioning, create major versions, which every time you save a document, it's published or visible to everybody. And that's what a major version is, where it's 1.0, 1.0, 1.0. And then the next one is major and minor. And this one's really handy. I would use an example for you of a SOP. You have a standard operating procedure that's been approved for 2017. It's been in place the whole year. But every year you have to do an annual audit, and maybe you're making changes, getting ready for the 2018 calendar year, and you want to publish that new SOP. You can start editing that SOP in 2017 without anybody but you and your fellow editors seeing those changes. And SharePoint will save them as 1.1, 1.2, 1.50, 1.51. No one will see anything until you decide to publish it as a major version, which is a different training. But when you publish it, it goes from 1.50, for example, to 2.0. The minute it becomes 2.0, that 2.0 replaces 1.0, and it's a way for you to easily replace a 2017 standard operating procedure, or SOP, with the new approved 2018 version. So that's the difference between major and minor versions there. You can already see I talked about the number of versions you put in here. I don't believe in these, so I'd rather actually just recommend you keep it off, but I think it's pretty intuitive on what it's telling you to do. And the same thing can happen for drafts, for how much you should be keeping. The next section is draft item security, and this is the part that kind of goes a little bit with approvers who can see what you're working on. I use the example of the SOP. If you sit there and say any users who can read items, it means anybody who has access to this document library, where you might have that SOP you're working on, they can now see those changes. That's fine if this is a document library that's designed more for editing. But if you're looking for it as an organizational document library of approved SOPs, you don't want people to see those changes. And that's when you would sit there and change it to only users who can edit. you would sit there and set security so that everybody in your organization has read access to your SOPs, but only a few of you have the ability to edit those SOPs. Those people who can edit can see drafts. Those people who cannot and can only read would only see the published version, the approved version of an SOP. And then the last one is coming down here on require checkout. This one's an interesting one. It's a collaborative decision you have to decide. If you're going to have multiple people editing at the same time, you don't want to require checkout. But if you want to lock down editing so only one of you is editing at a time, this is a very handy feature where you just say require checkout, and that means anytime you want to edit a document, it would be checked out, your name would be visible to your colleagues, they could open up a document to edit it and see that you have it checked out and they cannot edit it in that version until you release it. That's handy to keep the edits under control, but it's also really good communication to let people know who's got this file locked, which in the past has been kind of an issue. And so that concludes walking through the version settings for a document library. And this concludes the lesson for today. I'm going to go back to the main homepage here. I hope you found this tip useful as you continue to use Microsoft-related products in support of your day-to-day job. Please provide me with feedback in the comment, letting me know how I can make the Microsoft Tips Showcase channel and actual tips more useful to you. Feel free to suggest tips we can create for you, and we'll get them on the schedule. Finally, if you found this review helpful, please share it with others. I'm your host, Neil McDonald with SV MacPack. I thank you for joining me today and hope you'll join me again for other tips.